500,000 Suliban invaders swarmed the capital city of Xandar Prime, annihilating everything in their way, as only one human stood against the alien tide that would mean humanity's extinction. Grizzled Sergeant Bruce Henry raced through the hallways of the Galactic Council headquarters, the urgent summons propelling him forward. He burst into the council chambers, skidding to a stop as he realized the normally bustling space was eerily empty. Only one figure remained, an elderly Xylothian named Odin, his face grim. "Sergeant Henry, thank you for coming so quickly. I'm afraid the situation is dire," Odin said. He explained that the ruthless Suliban had launched a devastating surprise attack on Xandar Prime. Their ground forces numbered 500,000, led by the brilliant and cruel General Thrax. The Council's planetary defenses had already fallen, the other members fled or captured. Odin had managed to send a distress signal before communications were cut. Bruce frowned. "Sir, with all due respect, why call me here alone? We need the full might of the Alliance fleet." Odin shook his head. "The fleet is engaged in a diversionary action to buy us time, and you, Sergeant, are our secret weapon. I've discovered that General Thrax once fought your father in the Corvus campaign decades ago. Thrax barely escaped with his life, and he's harbored a vendetta ever since. His forces are actually hunting for you, unaware that you're not on Xandar Prime." Bruce's eyes widened as Odin continued. "I want to use this to our advantage. I'm sending you to assassinate Thrax and sabotage the Suliban command ship. Without Thrax's strategic brilliance, their forces will be thrown into disarray." "One man against 500,000? That's suicide," Bruce protested. Odin handed him an innocuous wristband. This experimental personal cloaking device, reverse-engineered from Suliban tech, will allow you to infiltrate their ranks undetected, but its power is limited. You have 36 hours to complete the mission and reach the extraction point. Bruce balked. "And how am I supposed to take down 500,000 troops by myself?" Odin's expression was grim. "You won't have to. Assassinate Thrax, sabotage their command ship, and our forces can handle the rest once the fleet arrives. I won't lie to you, Sergeant. This is likely a one-way trip. But if you can cripple the Suliban here, you'll turn the tide of the war. You'll save billions of lives on other Council worlds." Bruce squared his shoulders, the weight of the galaxy settling upon them. He gave Odin a curt nod. The stakes had never been higher. The fate of Xandar Prime, of the Galactic Council, of humanity itself, now rested on the shoulders of one man. One human soldier against 500,000 alien invaders. The odds were impossible. The mission was suicidal, but Bruce Henry would be damned if he let the Suliban destroy everything he'd fought to protect. He would complete this mission or die trying. With a final salute to Odin, Bruce strapped on the cloaking device and strode towards the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Bruce strode through the armory, grabbing an array of compact weapons, a pulse rifle, plasma grenades, and his trusty vibroblade. He snapped them onto his combat harness and took a few practice shots, the pulse rifle humming in his hands. Odin entered, a data chip in his palm. Bruce slotted the chip into his comm, the blueprints flickering to life before his eyes. He traced the routes, committing every corridor and access point to memory. Odin gestured for Bruce to follow. They traversed the empty hallways, their footsteps echoing in the silence. Odin pressed his hand to a hidden scanner, revealing a secret door that slid open with a hiss. Inside was a compact shuttle, sleek and black. Bruce ran his hand along its hull, noting the cloaking emitters along the fuselage. He climbed into the cockpit, the controls coming alive at his touch. Odin stood back, his face etched with worry. "Godspeed, Sergeant Henry. The fate of the galaxy rests on your shoulders." Bruce nodded, his jaw set. The canopy closed, and the shuttle lifted off, slipping into the void of space. As Xandar Prime loomed into view, Bruce activated the cloaking device. The shuttle shimmered and vanished, gliding past the Suliban blockade undetected. He angled towards the planet's surface, the shuttle buffeted by the turbulent atmosphere. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the craft. Alarms screeched as the shuttle spiraled out of control. the cloaking field flickering and dying. Bruce fought with the controls, realizing the Suliban must have deployed anti-cloaking countermeasures. He managed to level out the shuttle moments before impact. The craft slammed into the ground, metal shrieking as it skidded across the rocky terrain. It came to rest at the edge of a cliff, smoke pouring from its engines. Bruce kicked open the crumpled door, stumbling out into the harsh alien landscape. In the distance, the Suliban headquarters loomed, a fortress bristling with weaponry. Energy bolts sizzled past Bruce's head as a patrol converged on the crash site. He activated his personal cloaking device, vanishing from sight. The Suliban soldiers approached cautiously, their rifles sweeping the area. Bruce drew his pulse rifle, lining up a shot. He knew the moment he fired, his position would be revealed. But there was no choice. He took a deep breath and squeezed the trigger. The pulse rifle bucked in his hands and the nearest Suliban dropped. The others whirled, energy bolts scorching the ground where Bruce had been a heartbeat before. He rolled, coming up firing. 2 more Suliban fell, their chests smoking holes. But the rest zeroed in on his position, their shots coming closer with each volley. Bruce's cloak flickered, the device's power drained by the constant fire. He dived behind the wrecked shuttle, plasma scorching the hull inches from his head. He checked the rifle's charge, only half a clip left. The Suliban were closing in, their footsteps echoing on the rocky ground. Bruce's eyes darted to the looming headquarters in the distance, so close yet so far. He gripped his rifle, preparing to make a final stand. But then, an idea formed, a desperate gamble that just might work. Bruce reached for his belt, his fingers closing around a plasma grenade. He took a deep breath and then, with a roar of defiance, he charged out from behind the shuttle, directly at the oncoming Suliban patrol. The aliens opened fire, energy bolts filling the air. But Bruce was already moving, his rifle spitting plasma as he ran. He activated the grenade and hurled it at the patrol's feet. The explosion consumed them, their screams lost in the roar of the blast. Bruce didn't look back, he just ran, straight towards the looming fortress ahead, and the impossible mission that awaited him. Bruce squeezed the trigger, pulse rifle bucking hard against his shoulder. The shot took the first Suliban clean in the head, dropping him in place. His buddy didn't even have time to turn before Bruce put a bolt through his back. But the others were already diving for cover, plasma sizzling where Bruce had been a split second before. He rolled right, cloaking flickering as he moved. Invisible, Bruce flanked left, monofilament blade held tight. The first had no clue, turning just in time to see the blade flash for his throat. His gurgle was drowned by his friend's scream as Bruce hamstrung him, finishing with a pulse bolt to the head. "Hold fire!" the Suliban sergeant snapped, fist upraised. "Report, soldier, what the fuck happened here?" "Ambush, sir," Bruce called back, lowering his gun. "Xandarian insurgents, 5 or 6 at least. Took the squad by surprise. I'm the only one left." The sergeant swore viciously. He waved to his squad. "You with us, we'll hunt down those rebel scum. Which way did they go?" Bruce gestured at the winding canyons ahead. "They ran that way, sir. Looked like they were heading for cover in the rocks." The sergeant nodded, already on the move. "Double time it, squad, no survivors!" Bruce fell into step at the back, mind racing. He had to lead these bastards away from the headquarters, buy time to complete his mission. But how? It hit him then. The rebel radio chatter he'd been monitoring. They had an encampment somewhere in these canyons. If he could steer the Suliban into them... Slowly, carefully, Bruce subtly shifted the squad's direction, guiding them down side passages and switchbacks. The sergeant was too focused on finding rebels to notice. Then, as they rounded a bend, plasma fire erupted from the rocks ahead. The rebels had found them, or rather, Bruce had found the rebels for them. The Suliban returned fire, the canyon becoming a storm of energy bolts and ricochets. Bruce hit the deck, crawling for the edge of the fight. A plasma bolt scorched the rock inches from his head, hot enough to blister. He didn't stop, didn't look back. Let the Suliban and rebels kill each other, he had a job to do. Scrambling clear, Bruce ran, already scanning the terrain. He needed a way into the headquarters, some vulnerability to exploit. There, on his TAC display, the schematics Odin had given him, a network of lava tubes twisting beneath the structure, if he could access them. There, a half-hidden crack in the canyon wall just wide enough to slip through. Bruce ducked inside, the cool subterranean air, a relief after the blazing heat above. The relief was short-lived. A deep, guttural growl echoed from the gloom ahead. Bruce froze, rifle snapping up. Glowing reptilian eyes emerged from the darkness. One pair, then another, then 3 more. Ambush predators, the Suliban's last line of defense. Bruce thumbed the selector to full auto as the beasts charged. The cavern erupted in a storm of howls and gunfire. Bruce's rifle clicked empty as the last scaly beast crumpled, smoking holes peppering its hide. He yanked his blade free, green gore splattering his armor as he flicked it clean. A quick check showed his cloak was at half power. That little detour had cost him. No time to waste. Bruce charged through the tunnels, boots pounding stone, following the schematics until he hit a vertical shaft. Up he climbed, emerging into a dim maintenance hall. The command center was close. Bruce crept forward, hugging the walls. There, 2 elites guarding the entrance, rifles ready. No way past them. Not directly. Bruce scanned up, catching sight of vent ducts snaking overhead. Bingo! He boosted himself in, crawling forward until the grate below framed his target. General Thrax himself, snarling at a hollow map, while grunts scurried around him. Bruce palmed a plasma grenade, fingers curling around the pin. One quick drop and boom, no more command staff. His arm tensed, ready to throw, and froze. Shit. He hadn't clocked the civvies packed in there, Xandarians by the look of it. Poor bastards were meat shields for the brass. Bruce swore under his breath. Blowing the grenade would splatter the innocents too. He needed a new plan. Then it hit him. The mission brief had mentioned Thrax's ego, how he loved playing big dog for the troops. Bruce slithered back, dropping into an alcove as he combed into the Suliban network. There, buried in the chatter, Thrax, rally, main hangar, 1 hour. Perfect. Bruce slunk towards the muster point, blending with the grunts. His wrist pinged a warning, cloak at 15% and dropping. He'd have to time this just right, or he'd be ass out in the Suliban lion's den. Bruce gritted his teeth, hand hovering over the cloaking trigger as he marched into the hangar. Bruce marched into the hangar bay, pulse rifle held loosely at his side. Hundreds of Suliban soldiers swarmed the cavernous space, a sea of chitinous armor and twitching antennae. The clank and whir of last-minute weapons checks echoed off the walls. Bruce shouldered his way to the front of the assembly, the Suliban troops parting before his stolen armor. His eyes scanned the raised platform ahead, waiting for his target to appear. The minutes crawled by, tension ratcheting up with each passing second. Bruce's finger hovered over his rifle's trigger, his other hand poised to activate the cloaking device. Sudden silence fell as a figure emerged onto the platform. General Thrax, his face a rugged landscape of scars, each one a trophy from a past battle. His presence commanded attention, his aura one of unquestioned authority and ruthless cunning. Thrax surveyed the assembled troops with a predatory gaze. He opened his mouth, his voice a guttural rasp. "Soldiers of the Suliban, today we crush the Xandarian scum and grind their cities to dust." As Thrax spoke, Bruce began to inch forward, weaving through the tightly packed soldiers. Just a few more steps and he'd have a clean shot. A piercing klaxon split the air, a discordant wail that set Bruce's teeth on edge. The Suliban troops snapped to attention, 1,000 spines straightening in unison. Thrax snarled orders, his words lost in the sudden commotion. Bruce's stolen helmet crackled with frantic chatter. He strained to listen, picking out fragments over the cacophony. A Xandarian spec ops, breached perimeter, advancing on command. Bruce's blood ran cold. The Xandarians were here in the heart of the Suliban stronghold, and they had no idea Bruce was already inside, poised to take out Thrax. If the Xandarians attacked now, they'd blow his one shot at ending this. He had to act fast. Thrax was already moving, his guards closing ranks around him as he strode off the platform, heading for the command center. Bruce's hand flew to his cloaking device. He had a split second to decide, go after Thrax now or pull back and help the Xandarians. The mission came first. It had to. Bruce activated his cloak and vanished, ghosting through the ranks of Suliban and sprinting after Thrax. Chaos reigned in the halls, alarms blaring and soldiers scrambling to defensive positions. Bruce dodged and weaved, invisible, his rifle raised and ready. He caught up to Thrax just as the general ducked into the command center, his elite guard fanning out to secure the room. Bruce slipped in behind them, a flicker in the air, his cloaking device sputtering worryingly. Inside, Thrax was already barking orders, his staff scrambling to coordinate a defense against the Xandarians. Bruce raised his rifle, sighting down the barrel at Thrax's scarred head. The world went white as a massive explosion shook the room. Consoles sparked and screens shattered. The Xandarians had breached the command center. Thrax rallied instantly, bellowing orders as he ran for the rear exit, his guard falling in around him. Bruce cursed and squeezed the trigger, but his shot went wide as another blast rocked the floor beneath his feet. The cloaking device died with a whine, its power cell drained. Bruce decloaked in a shimmer of fading light, suddenly exposed amidst the swarming Suliban. No time for subtlety now. Bruce opened fire, pulse bolts stitching deadly lines across the room. Suliban guards fell, smoking holes punched through their armor. Bruce leapt past their crumpling bodies, pounding after Thrax. He caught a flash of the general disappearing down a side corridor. Bruce reached the intersection just as his cloak sputtered its last and died completely. He spun around the corner, rifle leveled at Thrax. The scarred general stood at the far end of the hall, a strange smile on his lips. He raised his hand, a small device clutched in his fist. "You may be good, human," Thrax rasped, "but I'm better." Bruce had only a split second to process the general's words before Thrax pressed the device and the world exploded in light and thunder. With a primal roar, Bruce launched himself at Thrax, slamming the general into the shuttle's control panel. Thrax's head smashed against the flickering controls, sparks erupting from the impact. The shuttle lurched violently, veering off course as the navigation system went haywire. Bruce didn't hesitate. His fingers flew across the control panel, inputting new coordinates. The Suliban warship, looming like a monstrous spectre above Xandar Prime. Thrax, dazed but not defeated, staggered to his feet, rage contorting his scarred face as he realized Bruce's intent. "You'll kill us both, human," Thrax snarled, lunging at Bruce with renewed fury. The two warriors clashed in the cramped confines of the shuttle, a whirlwind of striking limbs and gnashing teeth. Thrax's clawed fist slammed into a bulkhead, tearing through metal like tissue paper. Bruce ducked under a swinging blow, his retaliatory kick sending Thrax crashing into a sparking control panel. Bruce's body screamed in agony, every muscle pushed beyond its limits. His vision blurred, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm him. But through the shuttle's viewscreen, the Suliban warship loomed ever closer, a behemoth of destruction waiting to be unleashed upon Xandar Prime. Bruce couldn't give up, not now. Not when the fate of billions hung in the balance. With a final, desperate surge of strength, Bruce tackled Thrax, grappling the general in a crushing hold. They slammed against the shuttle's airlock, the metal groaning under their combined weight. Bruce's fist slammed down on the emergency release. The airlock hissed open, the vacuum of space hungrily clawing at its new opening. Thrax's eyes widened in sudden dawning horror. He scrabbled for purchase, but Bruce's grip was unrelenting. With a final defiant roar, Thrax was sucked out into the void, his scream fading into the infinite silence of space. Bruce clung to the shuttle's interior, every fiber of his being straining against the vacuum's pull. With a Herculean effort, he hauled himself to the control panel, his fingers flying across the keys. He overrode the safety protocols, setting the shuttle on an unbending course towards the warship's main reactor. The collision alarm blared, a klaxon of impending doom. Bruce turned, staggering towards the escape pods. He had seconds, maybe less. He barely made it inside before the shuttle slammed into the warship's hull. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic, a blinding flash of light that seared Bruce's retinas even through the escape pod's shielded viewport. The warship's hull buckled and tore, massive fissures spreading like cracks in glass. The warship's reactor went critical, a chain reaction of destruction that ripped the mighty vessel apart from the inside out. Gargantuan chunks of debris rained down on the battle-scarred surface of Xandar Prime, crushing Suliban ground forces and sowing chaos amongst their ranks. Bruce's escape pod tumbled end over end, buffeted by the shockwave of the exploding warship. He braced himself against the pod's interior, gritting his teeth as G-forces threatened to crush him into unconsciousness. Finally, mercifully, the pod's stabilizers kicked in, arresting its wild spin. Bruce, his breath coming in ragged gasps, peered out the viewport at the devastation below. The Xandarian forces, emboldened by the sudden and dramatic destruction of the Suliban warship, surged forward, pushing back against the invaders with renewed vigor. Suliban soldiers, their morale shattered by the loss of their command ship and the death of General Thrax, threw down their weapons in droves, surrendering en masse. Bruce slumped back in his seat, a wave of exhausted relief washing over him. He'd done it. Against all odds, he'd completed his mission. Xandar Prime would survive to see another day. But his respite was short-lived. The escape pod's comm system crackled to life, a desperate voice barely audible through the static. "This is Strike Leader Zahn of the Xandarian Special Forces. We're pinned down and taking heavy casualties, requesting immediate assistance." Bruce leaned forward, his brow furrowing. He recognized that voice. It belonged to the leader of the strike team that had infiltrated the Suliban headquarters. They were deep behind enemy lines, cut off and surrounded. Bruce glanced at his weapons, a half-empty pulse rifle, a handful of plasma grenades and his trusty vibroblade. The odds of a successful rescue were slim to none. But Bruce Henry had never been one to shy away from a fight, no matter the odds. He couldn't leave an ally behind. Not now, not ever. With a grunt of determination, Bruce overrode the escape pod's controls, inputting the coordinates of Strike Leader Zahn's last known position. The pod's engines flared to life, propelling him towards the heart of the battle once more. He was walking into the jaws of death, and he knew it, but Bruce Henry never backed down from a fight. Bruce's escape pod shuddered as another near-miss rocked the tiny craft. The once pristine skies of Xandar Prime were now choked with smoke and debris, a hellish tableau of destruction. Bruce gritted his teeth, wrestling with the controls as he wove through the aerial gauntlet. His eyes flicked to the navigational display, the pulsing dot of the Xandarian strike team's position, drawing closer with each passing second. But as he neared their coordinates, Bruce's heart sank. The ground below was a roiling sea of explosions, with Suliban artillery positions relentlessly pounding the area. Bruce knew a direct approach was suicide. He scanned the pod's inventory, his gaze settling on a compact grav chute. A high-altitude insertion was risky, but it was his only chance. With deft movements, Bruce strapped on the chute, securing it to his battered armor. He took a deep breath, his hand hovering over the hatch release. A heartbeat of hesitation, then he slammed his palm down. The hatch blew open, the sudden decompression nearly tearing Bruce from his seat. Gritting his teeth, he launched himself into the maelstrom, the pod receding behind him as he plummeted towards the surface. The wind howled past Bruce's ears, his body buffeted by the turbulent air currents. The grav chute automatically adjusted his trajectory, micro-thrusters firing to keep him on course. The ground rushed up to meet him, a war-torn hellscape of crumbling buildings and cratered streets. Bruce hit hard, his knees flexing to absorb the impact. He rolled, coming up in a crouch, his pulse rifle already in his hands. A quick scan of his surroundings revealed no immediate threats, but the distant chatter of gunfire spurred Bruce into motion. He picked his way through the rubble, his footsteps cautious and measured. As he drew closer to the Xandarian team's location, Bruce encountered the first pockets of Suliban resistance. A patrol rounded a corner, their chitinous armor glinting in the dusty half-light. Bruce didn't hesitate. His rifle snapped up, a burst of plasma bolt stitching across the lead Suliban's chest. The alien crumpled, his comrades scattering for cover. The Suliban's claw-tipped gauntlets raked at Bruce's face, but he ducked beneath the blow, his blade slicing up in a vicious arc. The alien fell back, ichor spurting from the gash in its throat. Bruce fought like a man possessed, his every move driven by a primal need to reach his beleaguered allies. Block, thrust, fire, roll, a deadly dance amidst the rubble and ruin. Finally, Bruce reached the crumbling ruins of a temple, the Xandarian team's last bastion. The scene that greeted him was one of desperate battle, the strike team outnumbered and outgunned by a force of elite Suliban shock troopers. Without hesitation, Bruce charged into the fray, a roar of defiance tearing from his throat. His sudden appearance threw the Suliban into momentary disarray, a confusion Bruce exploited ruthlessly. He fought his way to the side of a grizzled Xandarian veteran, the man's armor scorched and dented. The soldier gave Bruce a curt nod, respect and relief mingled in his eyes. "Sergeant Krelox," he introduced himself, his voice a guttural rasp. "Damn glad to see you, human." Bruce returned the nod, his rifle never ceasing its deadly chatter. Together he and Krelox rallied the Xandarians, their combined skill and ferocity turning the tide of the battle. The last Suliban trooper fell, a smoking hole punched through his chest plate. In the sudden silence, Bruce and the Xandarians took a moment to regroup, tending to their wounded amidst the wreckage. Krelox approached Bruce, his face grim. "Listen, human. We've got to take out a nearby Suliban comms hub. It's how they're coordinating their forces planetside. We knock that out, we buy time for the fleet to get here." Bruce nodded, understanding the gravity of the mission. "Lead the way, Sergeant. We'll get it done." As the battered team set out, Bruce could feel the weight of Xandar Prime's fate settling on his shoulders, but with Krelox and the strike team at his side, he allowed himself a flicker of hope. The comms hub awaited, and with it a chance to turn the tide of this war. Bruce crept forward, Zaxxon and Ryla flanking him. The maintenance room stank of rust and stagnant water. Pipes snaked along the walls, leaking fetid condensation. Ryla tapped Bruce's shoulder, pointing to a dark alcove. "Ladder there, should take us to the upper levels." They ascended, Bruce in the lead. He paused at the hatch, straining to hear over the gunfire above. Satisfied, he cracked it open. The corridor was empty, lit by flickering glow panels. Bruce hauled himself up, rifle raised. Zaxxon and Ryla followed. Zaxxon consulted his scanner. "Main data core is 2 levels up. If we can plant charges there." A plasma bolt sizzled past his ear. Suliban troopers poured from an adjoining hall, weapons blazing. They dived aside as the walls erupted in molten streaks. Bruce fired from a crouch, downing 2 Suliban. Ryla dropped another with a headshot. Zaxxon lobbed a grenade. The blast hurled shrapnel and shredded Suliban. "Move, before more come!" They sprinted down the corridor, alarms blaring. Twice more Suliban squads tried to block their path. Twice more they left only charred corpses behind. The data core's blast door loomed ahead, sealed, reinforced. Zaxxon slapped a breaching charge on the lock. "Stand clear!" The charge detonated, filling the air with smoke and sparks. The door groaned open. Bruce covered the entrance as Zaxxon and Ryla darted inside. Banks of servers stretched into the shadows, blinking with sullen lights. Zaxxon tossed satchel charges to Ryla. 30 seconds per charge, full coverage. Let's make it quick." "Charges set," Ryla reported. "Ready to detonate on your—" The door slammed open. A hulking Suliban in heavy armor filled the gap, cannon raised. Behind him, a dozen troopers aimed rifles. The Suliban commander grinned cruelly. "Surrender, human. You've nowhere to run." Bruce's grip tightened on his rifle. Trapped, outgunned, out of options. Zaxxon's hand hovered near the detonator. His eyes met Bruce's, a question in them. Bruce gave the slightest nod. Zaxxon's thumb stabbed down. The world vanished in thunder and flame. The detonation rocked Bruce to his core. He stumbled, ears ringing, as the maintenance room quaked around them. Suliban guards boiled in, plasma rifles spitting deadly bolts. Ryla cried out, a searing shot catching her square in the chest. She crumpled, smoke curling from her ruined armor. Zaxxon roared in anger, dragging her behind a rusting console. His hands flew as he yanked an emergency medkit from his belt. Bruce lunged forward, monofilament blade flashing. The first guard died before he could scream, throat laid open to the bone. The second got a shot off, scorching Bruce's pauldron before a return blast took his head off. "Hold on, Rye," Zaxxon ground out, his voice tight with fear and fury as he worked to stabilize her. "Don't you dare die on me." Bruce spared them a glance, heart clenching. Ryla's face was ashen, her breathing fast and shallow, but there was no time to stop. "Get her stable and catch up," he barked, slamming a fresh power pack into his rifle. "I'll push ahead to the Karma Ray." Zaxxon gave a tight nod, focus never wavering from his fallen comrade. Bruce turned, steeling himself, and plunged deeper into the hub. Every step was a battle, every corner a potential ambush. Suliban defenders met him at every turn, their fire stitching the walls around him. Bruce fought like a man possessed, rifle and blade reaping a terrible toll. His armor smoked, the ceramic plates cracked and pitted. Blood ran into his eyes from a gash on his forehead. But still he pressed on, an unstoppable force of will and rage. At last he reached the central Comare, a vast spherical chamber filled with pulsing conduits and flickering hollow screens. And there, standing before the main control console, was his final obstacle. The Suliban commander towered over Bruce, a nightmarish fusion of flesh and metal, his faceplate retracted, revealing a cruel, scarred visage twisted in contempt. "So the human insect scurries this far," he rumbled, his voice a grating electronic rasp. Cybernetic limbs whirred as he stepped forward, a squad of elite warriors fanning out behind him. "I will enjoy crushing you." Bruce raised his blade in challenge, the razor edge thrumming. "Bring it on, you half-breed freak." The commander lunged, moving with inhuman speed. Bruce parried, servos whining in his armor as he strained against the cyborg's strength. They traded blows in a brutal dance, sparks cascading from clashing metal. The monofilament edge bit into the commander's shoulder, shearing through metal and muscle. The cyborg bellowed in pain and rage, his return strike cracking Bruce's helmet like an eggshell. Half-blinded, head-ringing, Bruce rolled clear. His blade was gone, wrenched from his grip. He scrabbled for his rifle, fingers closing around the grip. The commander loomed over him, raising a fist to crush Bruce's skull. Bruce brought the rifle up point-blank against the cyborg's chest. He screamed his defiance and pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt punched clean through the commander's torso, burning a fist-sized hole. The cyborg staggered, mouth working soundlessly. Then he toppled, vital systems fried. Bruce hauled himself upright, gasping. His body felt like one giant bruise, his armor hung in tatters, but he was alive. Zaxxon's voice crackled over the comm, strained but triumphant. "Charges set, boss. Let's blow this place and get the hell out." Ryla's voice joined in, weak but determined. "You heard him. Hit it, Bruce!" Bruce limped to the console, every step an agony. He input the final command and slammed his fist down on the detonator. The world went white. The comm array vanished in an expanding fireball, a maelstrom of heat and shrapnel. Consoles exploded, screens shattered, the ceiling buckled and gave way, raining debris. Bruce felt himself lifted and hurled, tossed about like a leaf in a hurricane. He slammed into a wall, felt something crack in his chest. Darkness closed in, dragging him down. The next thing he knew, Zaxxon was hauling him up, slinging Bruce's arm over his shoulders. Ryla leaned against the far wall, clutching her side but upright. "We have to move," Zaxxon yelled over the chaos. "This whole place is coming down." They stumbled through the collapsing hub, dodging falling girders and gouts of flame. Krelox and the other Xandarians met them halfway, battered but alive. Together, they clawed their way out, fighting past the last pockets of Suliban resistance. They burst from the rubble into the open air, gulping down lungfuls of smoke-tinged breeze. The sky above was filled with the shapes of Galactic Council warships, hammering at the disarrayed Suliban forces. He looked to Ryla, her face pale and drawn with pain. To the haunted eyes of the Xandarian survivors, far too few in number, the cost had been too high. In the aftermath, as the cheers of victory rang out, Bruce stood apart. Accolades and praise washed over him, but he felt hollow inside. The Galactic Council offered him a position of high command, but he turned it down. He had fought for duty, for the cause, but now with the blood of friends on his hands and the scars of Xandar Prime seared into his soul, Bruce knew only one truth. There would always be another fight, another desperate battle against the dark, and he would be there to meet it. Not for glory, but because it was right. With a heavy heart, he boarded a transport watching Xandar Prime recede in the viewport. The stars stretched out before him, cold and infinite. Bruce closed his eyes and let the weight of the fallen settle upon his shoulders. He would carry them with him always, a reminder of the price of a galaxy's freedom, and a grim promise that no matter how dark the night, there would always be those who stood against it. One soldier, one human, unbowed and unbroken. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.